You're listening to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcast on a European Services e-card.
We live in a services economy, but despite EU rules to facilitate the provision of services in the single market, service providers operating across borders still face obstacles and a lot of red tape.
With the introduction of a European Services e-card, the Commission wants to give a fresh boost to the services sector and remove remaining barriers. Stay with us and we'll walk you through the details of this proposal.
Services are crucial to the EU economy. They account for over 70% of its GDP and generate 90% of all the jobs.
In sectors such as construction and business, providing services across borders is increasingly common, and the number of companies doing it keeps on growing. However, it's not always easy to benefit from business opportunities in other member states.
Service providers, notably SMEs, trying to set up shop in another EU country or to provide temporary cross-border services have a hard time understanding which rules apply and how. They also face heavy compliance costs when operating across borders.
All these barriers stop firms from expanding, which leads to higher prices for consumers and less choice. Moreover, the performance of manufacturing is increasingly linked to the competitiveness of services, so barriers to trade in services are also barriers to the competitiveness of EU manufacturing.
The Services Directive, adopted in 2006, was a first attempt to break down these barriers and facilitate the establishment of service providers, making it easier for them to offer cross-border services within the single market.
This stimulated a number of reforms across member states, though it wasn't the leap forward the Commission had wished for.
So in January 2017, as part of a wider strategy to unlock the full potential of the single market, the Commission unveiled plans for the introduction of a European Services e-card. Now, what's this about?
Similar to the European Professional Card, the Services e-card would allow service providers to use a simplified electronic procedure to get through the administrative formalities required to provide services abroad.
The scheme would be purely voluntary, so on request, the home member state authorities would issue service providers a services passport as proof that they fulfill the requirements applicable in the member state in which they want to work.
The host member state would remain responsible for defining these requirements and would have the last word in deciding whether the applicant is allowed to offer services on its territory. The e-card would also not affect existing employer obligations or workers' rights.
Besides enjoying greater legal certainty, holders of the Services e-card, be they companies or self-employed workers, would also face less red tape and would no longer have to fill in disparate forms in foreign languages or worry about translating, certifying and authenticating documents or about following intricate non-electronic procedures.
At first, the Services e-card would apply to business and construction services, not covering areas such as tax, labour or social security.
The Commission hopes that tackling the remaining obstacles to the cross-border provision of services will help strengthen competition in the EU, resulting in more choice and better prices for consumers, while also boosting innovation.
But getting to this point has required some skillful negotiation. Let's peek behind the curtain of EU politics.
To pave the way for the Services e-card proposal, the Commission carried out an evaluation of the 2006 Services Directive.
The exercise revealed a mixed picture, with key barriers to a fully functioning single market for services remaining, despite the additional growth generated by member states' reforms.
So after deeper analysis, the Commission put the new e-card proposal out to public consultation and assessed its potential impact.
In a preliminary assessment, the European Parliament welcomed the idea of a services passport, provided this would lead to greater transparency regarding the powers of cross-border service providers and cut red tape.
MEPs also stressed that the e-card should not lead to the reintroduction of the country of origin approach and see it as a temporary solution until a fully integrated single market is in place.
The Commission considered the Parliament's comments to be very much in line with its own views and assured MEPs that it is working hard to reduce restrictions on the cross-border trade of products and services and to achieve more integrated and competitive markets in member states.
The plans were also backed by member states and stakeholders in the business services sector in general. However, concerns have been raised about possible undesired effects the new proposal might trigger, such as reduced control opportunities and impractical bureaucratic procedures for host member states.
Some workers' associations fear it would not make the internal market fairer, but would instead lead to more social dumping and less protection for workers' rights, further increasing the number of letterbox companies and workers in bogus self-employment.
Building and carpenters associations in particular have rejected the idea of a services e-card on the grounds that the vast majority of construction companies operate at local or regional level, which creates barriers based on language, technical requirements and cultural differences that no e-card could remove.
National parliaments have also raised concerns. Both the Austrian Federal Council and the German Bundesrat fear that instead of leading to simplification, the services e-card will actually increase the bureaucratic burden on member states.
And there are also subsidiarity and proportionality concerns, but the proposal is now in the hands of the Parliament's Internal Market and Consumer Affairs Committee, so we'll keep a close eye on political developments.
You're listening to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcasts.